Oh, sorry. It's easy to get lost in a story, isn't it? Hello, Lisbon. And hello, all the other countries where teachers and others are listening, watching this video. My name is Alec Williams. I'm a trainer, a speaker and a storyteller based in the UK in the north of England. Storytelling is what I was going to come to Lisbon to talk about, but I've got trouble with my chest. And I need my chest, you see, for when I'm doing stories about gorillas and things like that. So I shall have to appear on screen instead from my study, which is lucky enough to have space for lots of books. I need books because they're one of the main sources of stories. Now, the books over there are mainly folk tales. Most storytellers use folk tales, myths, legends, but I also use picture books, and the bay over there is all picture books. In this talk, I'm going to look first of all at the value of stories and the advantages of picture books. In the next section, I'll look at using your voice and gestures. The third section is about organising a story session. And the last one is about the pleasure of stories, that charm which incites the learning, as the Greek philosopher Strabo said. All stories are hugely valuable for children. I know you know this, but let me remind you briefly from a storyteller's perspective and about why it matters. First, language and speech. Children grow up learning the language of home, school, TV, playground, but not all will learn book language, which has its own richness and rhythms. Hearing stories in both their home language and English gives children the experience of speech in performance. It teaches them how language works and how to play with it, as well as how stories work. Finally, it teaches them listening in what is a shared and interactive experience. What does that mean for reading aloud? Well, keep in and enjoy unusual words. Speak clearly, make eye contact so that children can see you shape words and explain difficult words. Secondly, visual development. The pictures should help the story along, and children can learn about different styles of art. What does that mean? It means look out for a variety of artwork, but bear in mind also things like children further away from you may not see very detailed or very pale pictures. Thirdly, other skills, and there are lots of them. Stories improve concentration, thinking skills, physical skills like actions. What does that mean for reading aloud? It means look out for opportunities for children to join in. You could add an action, for example. In Shark in the Park, when the boy with the telescope appears, I can't resist doing this. Or maybe even this, an action to go with it. You can make the text interactive. Let's all pretend to do that together. Or use pause points. What would you have done? Fourthly, experience. From stories, children learn about other people, other places, other ways of behaving. What does that mean for reading aloud? Balance the stories they hear. Stories from around the whole world, such as that one, for example, from Kenya. And books challenging traditional roles, like some of the ICEPELL titles, and stories showing children from different cultures. Fifthly, emotional development. Children can explore their own emotions in a shared story, including, for example, fears faced safely at a distance. What does that mean when you read? It means be sensitive to what might disturb children and what they might disagree about. Remember also the security of a happy ending. Lastly, pleasure, because pleasure incites the learning. What does that mean for reading aloud? It means enjoy yourself. If you do, they will. Show your reactions. A teacher once said to me, I don't like to read Charlotte's Web to my class because it always makes me cry. And I said, is that bad that they see you being affected? I don't think it is. Choose stories you enjoy because you'll tell them better. And be sensitive at the end of the story. Children may like time to absorb the story quietly. Avoid every story having a follow-up activity. This is a very short story that you'll find in China and India. It's called The Cracked Pot. It was hot and dusty, and the old man was grateful for the 2 pots he used to carry water up from the river to his house. He'd had them a long time. One was perfect and beautiful to look at, but the other one was cracked. When the man filled them both from the riverbank, by the time he'd walked back to the village, the cracked one was half empty and the perfect one was still full to overflowing. Now the perfect pot became very proud. "I'm much better than you," he said to the other pot. "I don't know why he doesn't just smash you and get another beautiful pot to keep me company. You're not very much use, are you?" And the perfect pot went on like this day after day, so much so that eventually the cracked pot felt so sad and useless. He went to the old man and said to him, "I'm not very much use to you. I've leaked half my load by the time you come back from the river. You really ought to replace me with a new pot, and then you don't have to make so many journeys." "Oh, no," said the old man. "Look down the path to the river. What do you see on the side that I always carry you? Lots and lots of beautiful, sweet-smelling flowers. Without you, they would never grow. You've brought colour, beauty, and fragrance into my life. I could never replace you when you've enriched my life 1,000 times, and that of the other villagers. A new perfect pot could never do that." I said at the beginning that professional storytellers do that, just that, tell stories from memory. That kind of story has advantages, of course, but let's look at the advantages of picture books. They've got a direct association with the written word, so they link with literacy. They give a shared visual focus, which may help children to concentrate. They allow pictures to explain the words. They allow pauses to let children look at the pictures, and they enable children, if they're near, to see the text as you read. Don't skip, or they'll say, "You missed that bit." They also allow an accurate repetition of the text, which you may not be able to do from memory. They're also, of course, a safety blanket for teachers who are hesitant about remembering stories. They may allow a greater age and ability range of children to take part. And they allow those extra dimensions of book use, talking about the author and illustrator's names, looking at end papers, plus turning pages, prediction, lifting flaps. Finally, they encourage children to reread the same book afterwards, through the text, or maybe just replaying it through the pictures, plus maybe finding sequels or others by the same author, and so on. With these points in mind, let's finish this section with one of the ICEPELL picture books. It's called The Wall in the Middle of the Book, and it's by John Agee. This is how it starts. It starts with a wall right in the middle of the book, which, as you can see, the artist has used what in the UK we will call the gutter of the book to put the wall in. And here is the title, The Wall in the Middle of the... Oh, there's a rhinoceros. Here it goes. There's a wall in the middle of the book. That's the wall in the middle of the book. When I'm training in storytelling, I sometimes say, think of 3 pairs of opposites. 1, 2, 3. 3 pairs of opposites that your voice can do. While you're thinking of that for a moment, let me emphasize, first of all, the need for a sense of drama when you're reading aloud. One writer on storytelling, thinking of younger children when she wrote this, said it is impossible to go over the top. But even for older children, try to echo the tone of the words in the way you speak them. You should sound frightened in, "We might wake the giant," and questioning in, "Do you think we disturbed him?" Be ready to use dramatic pauses too. For me, those 3 pairs of opposites are fast and slow, loud and quiet, and high and low. Your voice might be fast when you're describing a chase, maybe, but slow it right down for suspense and emphasis. Don't rush. Your voice might be loud if it's a lion or a tiger, but soft for a rabbit or a mouse. Your voice might be high for a fairy or a princess, or low for a giant or an elephant. Many stories also provide you with 3 R's: rhyme, rhythm, and repetition. These help your own memory and help children because they start to anticipate what's coming. If the text is in verse, many picture books are poems in disguise, bring out the rhyme as you read. This is how I'd probably read Giraffes Can't Dance, or part of it, another ICEPELL book, accenting the rhyme and also echoing the tone of the animal's feelings. Now, let me go a bit further back and make sure you can see this time. Gerald was a tall giraffe whose neck was long and slim, but his knees were awfully bandy and his legs were rather thin. It's rather cruel to stop there, isn't it, really? But I need to because I want to move on to something else. And besides, that's one of the things I do, maybe with older books sometimes. I read a dramatic opening or an exciting episode early in the book and then say, and if you want to find out what happens, you can read the rest for yourself. So that's for you. Generally speaking, when you read aloud, consider things like these. Volume. Your voice should probably be a bit louder than normal conversation. If it's slightly enlarged, what my wife calls your storytelling voice, it commands attention and it will carry over children's asides to each other. More important than volume almost is speed. Many people read stories too fast, including, I'm afraid, me today. Slowing down means children will understand the words more easily, and it gives extra time to look at the pictures. Vary your pace occasionally, but don't rush. And don't forget diction too. Your words must be clear, and remember to sound the ends of the words. This is a line for a poem that I might read you later. It's about all the things a hand can do. This is the hand that cracked the nut. And you can hear the ends of cracked and nut. Be aware also of your own voice patterns. If you can bear it, try recording yourself to pick up any personal traits in your voice. It might be that you have a very sing-song delivery or one of those falling inflections, you know. It was a lovely sunny day and Alec went out for a walk and he went round the corner and then you take a breath and your voice comes down each time. And you may not realise some of these things are happening. Maybe also the Miss Piggy hair flick that you didn't realise that you did. Different voices. As I've mentioned already, your voice can go lower or higher. You might have a regional accent, and in my case, I suppose I could do an ooh like a country voice for a farmer, and maybe I can do a right Yorkshire accent from where I come from here in the north. Some of us also might have a posh phone answering voice, hello, this is Sandy Morale, that sort of thing. When you're trying to give characters different voices, it might help to think of a triangle with you in the center. Look left for one voice and look right for another to keep you on track. Gestures can help to clarify meaning. She started to cry. He knocked on the door. And I think it's impossible to say the word shh without putting a finger to your lips. And you can invite children, of course, to copy those gestures. One final word about the voice. Most of the points I've just made apply to performance storytelling, to a full class of children, or maybe even more. If you have the opportunity, either as a teacher or a parent, reading aloud can also be done to a small group, say 5 or 6, or even 1-to-1, maybe to calm a child. And in those cases, the reading would perhaps be less dramatic and full-throated. An example of the latter, but one that has an awful lot to offer a class group too, is Francesca Sanna's Me and My Fear. This is another one of the books that you've got on your list. Here you can see the end papers. And there are lots of different things here. There's a book called The Scariest Book. And maybe Hoops, maybe Little Model Dinosaur. when you get to the end of the book, have another look at the end papers, because at the very end, you can see those same objects, but they're being held this time by a little white creature. He comes into the story, or she comes into the story in a moment. So this is Me and My Fear by Francesca Sana, who I think has spoken to you already in your conference. I was very honoured to read the book, Francesca. I have always had a secret, a tiny friend called Fear. Maybe you can see down there. Very thoughtful book by Francesca Sana, and it's called Me and My Fear. Much of the success of reading aloud is about preparation, even before you get to choosing a book. Try to build expectation or anticipation that a story is coming. I don't mean get children overexcited. With a boisterous class, it might be about calming them down. Storytellers sometimes light a candle, spread out a rug, or use a singing bowl. All these things, if they're done regularly, tell children, oh, the story's about to begin. Try to have the session somewhere comfortable, fairly quiet, and undisturbed by others. I can hear teachers saying, if only my class was like that. If your school is prone to regular knocks on the classroom door, how about a "Don't disturb us, we're having a story" sign on the door outside? If you sit facing the entrance to the room, you can sometimes spot and stop any interruptions before they happen. Avoid the children facing a busy background like I've got, or a window. It might be too bright in their eyes, or interesting things may happen outside. If you plan to move as you tell the story, leave room to prowl about in front of the group. This may be less relevant with picture books, but you never know. I would sit children on the floor if possible. Carpets or mats are best. Chairs can cause quarrels or noise, and beanbags can cause wriggling. If you're using a picture book, my choice would be for you to sit on a chair so that everyone can see the pictures. I start from the premise of being at the same level, but you'll need some height so that the second row can see and subsequent rows. Avoid too long a line or semicircle of children. You won't be able to see the edges with your normal glance then, and you'll have to swing the book to and fro. For them, it'll be like watching tennis at Wimbledon. Tell children the title of the book, show them the cover, ask them what they think the story might be about, and give any necessary explanations. Don't forget the peritext. Hold the book carefully. Don't bend it back on itself. It encourages damage and sets a bad example. Don't cover your face, and don't keep flicking the book from your view to theirs. That will be very distracting. If you hold the book slightly to one side at an angle, like this, then you and they can see the pictures, and you can read the words usually by glancing sideways. Make sure your fingers aren't in the way of any words. Move the book round slowly as you're showing it to the children, so that each side of the row can see the pictures. Children should be able to see the book and your face, to see your expressions. I'd avoid putting the book somewhere separate on an easel or a music stand or something. I'd certainly avoid scanning the book and projecting it. You're modelling books here, you know. You could get one of these from the library or the shop. Think about the timing of pictures. Don't show them too early or too late. Use your eyes. Eye contact allows you to gauge the reactions of children. It gives facial expression to the words you're reading, and it can pull back wandering attention or stop children fidgeting, what Paddington Bear used to call a hard stare, or use their names. What do you think is going to happen, Michael? My own advice would be that the first time you read a book, read it straight, and let children make their own comments at the end if they want to. On subsequent readings, consider how to help children participate. You could break off from reading for a moment sometimes to share their thoughts. You could encourage children to talk about the pictures unless it spoils the narrative flow too much. Finally, let's look at preparing your story. Sometimes a child will grab a random book and say, "Read this one, miss," and you may have to read a story cold. But wherever possible, read the story first, then read it again, and maybe once more. Read it out loud to yourself, to your family or unsuspecting partner, so you're comfortable with it, and you find out if any words trip you up. Is there a natural lead-in to the story? This one, Eat Your Peas, is about a mother who has trouble getting a little girl to eat peas. And maybe you could start, do any of you have a favourite vegetable? What about your least favourite vegetable? The girl in this story has a vegetable she hates, and that leads you into the story. Could you introduce the story with a puppet or an object? I sometimes use this guy here with a book about an alligator, which I might read later. As I said earlier, explain any unusual words first. Write them on a flip chart, maybe. I sometimes do drawings. I remember in Vietnam I was storytelling and the children didn't understand the word shark, but all I had to do was this shape here of the sea, and then this shape of a fin, and they knew. Finally, look for opportunities to make a story interactive. Now, I think it's time you joined in a little. I can't hear you joining in, of course, from this video, but I shall be asking for reports afterwards. Here's the book I mentioned a moment ago, the one that I was introduced with my alligator friend. Is there a refrain? You bet there is. Snip Snap is by Mara Bergman and Mick Mayland. Here's a street, or before this, by the way, there's a drain, like a drain in the road. This is actually a sort of very junior version of the urban legend about those children who were given alligators as pets and get fed up with them and flush them down the loo. Snip Snap. Here is a night scene, look, but with some big footprints down here and a man who is rushing away in fright. Sorry, did I make you jump? It's very useful, isn't it? The difference between quiet and loud. You can use it to your advantage. This is a bit nicer. This is the entrance to a block of flats, a block of apartments. Lots of lovely green shapes, maybe plants. One of the green shapes is not quite so nice. Maybe you've spotted it. It's there. It's not actually a leaf, it's the alligator's tail. That's Snip Snap. Finally, a word about that picture book magic that your conference brochure describes. Not all picture books are designed for performance. Some are designed to share with just one or two children, and some have more complex language with wordplay or elaborate pop-ups or flaps. Read the first page or two aloud and you'll know if it's the sound of spoken words about it, that it's one that you can lift off the page in the telling. Some picture books will have such perfectly chosen language that they can and should be read word for word. Maurice Sendak's classic Where the Wild Things Are, for example, with its wonderful poetic text and haunting refrain, is just one example. But there are other books where you might alter a word or phrase to make the language suit your style or your audience's experience. We looked at this one before, didn't we? Eat Your Peas. And at the end, we get this sentence of the little girl saying to the mother, "I'll eat my peas if you eat your Brussels." Now, it might be difficult for some children in other countries or indeed in other parts of Britain. Brussels is short for Brussels sprouts, sprouts being the tiny cabbage-like vegetable. So You could substitute a word, or you could read the book's text and then just add an explaining phrase. Don't simplify the whole language of a book, though, please. When you're choosing a picture book to read, bear in mind the age and abilities of your class. Consider what stories they've already heard and how your story might build on this. Remember that a session could include different elements, not straight into a story. This is one example of a sort of question and answer book, which might be useful at the beginning when children are just settling down. Would you rather, it says, your house was surrounded by water, snow, or jungle? And the children can talk about which one they would choose. You'll get all sorts of interesting answers for these. You can also, of course, use things between the stories. I often use short poems or riddles. Here are just a couple of poems. Here, first of all, is the full version of that poem I mentioned before about the hand and all the things a hand can do. This is the hand that touched the frost, that froze my tongue and made it numb. This is the hand that cracked the nut that went in my mouth and never came out. This is the hand that slid round the bath to find the soap that wouldn't float. This is the hand on the hot water bottle meant to warm my bed that got lost instead. Where's it gone? This is the hand that held the bottle, that let go the soap, that cracked the nut, that touched the frost. This is the hand that never gets lost. It's called This is the Hand by the wonderful Michael Rosen. This is the wonderful Grace Nichols, and really you need to hear Grace's African Caribbean voice. I'm afraid you'll have to put up with mine. We've got another alligator here. Look, this is just called Alligator. It could easily follow, couldn't it, your alligator story if you use that. If you want to see an alligator, you must go down the muddy, slushy end of the old Karuni River. I know an alligator who's living down there. She's a big, she's a mean, she's a wild, she's a fierce. But if you really want to see an alligator, you must go down the muddy, slushy end of the old Karuni River. Go down gently to that river and say, Alligator Mama, Alligator Mama, Alligator Mama. And up she'll rise, but don't stick around, run for your life. A sense of drama, I think we said. Oh, just one riddle as an example, by the way. You go in one hole, you come out 3 holes, and when you're inside, you're ready to go outside. Okay? You go in one hole, you come out 3 holes, and when you're inside, you're ready to go outside. I'll put you out of your misery. A t-shirt, or maybe a sweater, going in one hole. There's the 3 holes. Okay, so poems and riddles and other things like that can help to space out a collection of 1 or 2 stories, a session of 1 or 2 stories. Try to include one story or rhyme that's new to you every time. It'll help to build your own repertoire. On the other hand, remember that children like hearing familiar stories more than once, don't they? And the more time you read it, the more confident you'll get. Have more stories ready than you'll need, because you never know. Choose stories with a quickly moving narrative, a minimum of description, notable incidents, something amusing, something scary perhaps, direct speech, a high point in the story with a satisfying ending. Remember that however pretty the pictures are in picture books, something must happen in the story. Finally, remember, as I might have said before, to let the picture book breathe by reading it first for the story alone. Obviously, if a child makes a comment, do answer them, but leave the analysis, the citizenship messages, the learning points for the second reading or later on. If it's a good book, and the ICEPELL list has got some great titles, you'll probably want to read it several times. In between books that you want to teach from also include plenty of others that are just for fun, where follow-up activities aren't inevitable. This is just for fun, and this is, I suppose, partly my way of thanking you for sitting so patiently through this video. I hope it will make you smile. It's called I Am a Tiger, and there is a tiger's tail there, but this is the animal that's speaking. I Am a Tiger by Carl Newson and Ross Collins. And here comes our mouse. I am a tiger. No, you're not, said the raccoon. A tiger is much bigger than you are and has a bit more grrr. I Am a Tiger is a lot of fun. I want to just say to you in conclusion that I hope you will have a lot of fun with reading picture books. I have a lot of fun visiting schools, and one of the things that I get a big kick from is children's feedback. I'm sure you get children's feedback too, of various kinds. This, to close, is a couple of letters from children about my visits to school. This one is a very posh school called Haberdashers Asks, a girls' school in the south of England. And this is from Amy, who says, Dear Mr. Williams, thank you for the stories. I thought they were fabulous. I have to use my posh voice, you see. She says, you have a fabulous imagination. Thank you for coming to our school and wasting your time on us. Thank you, Amy. This one is harder to read because the writer, Stacey, who is an 11-year-old, has coloured it in rather vigorously. And she says, I would like to thank you for doing funny stories and poems. You deserve to go on television anywhere but here. You are funnier than anyone could be, she says. If you have a wife, children and grandchildren, they must pee themselves laughing at you. Well, I do hope that that hasn't happened in this conference session. But I wish you the best of luck in using these lovely, lovely picture books. I hope you have as much fun in reading them as I have when I visit schools telling story. Thank you very much indeed for listening.
Well, Alec, we loved it. I think you realised that we loved hearing you. And so we want to say a great big thank you. Can we hear you?
I don't know.
Oh, yes! Yes, we can hear you. You're looking fabulous in your pink shirt. You're delayed, are you? Okay. Now, I think we do have questions, don't we? Yes, it's very nice, a very pink one. I like it a lot. Now, I didn't tell you this, but our questions are online. Yes? Okay, great. And so, I think you can... Can you see them on the screen? Okay. Okay, but when I introduced you, I told everyone that I'd fallen in love with you when I met you in 2003. And so one of the comments is, you weren't kidding about falling in love with him. So obviously they all fall in love with you too. Let's see. Okay, starting in Okay, you are such a wonderful and engaging storyteller. Did you attend training, workshops during your career? And could you recommend a course? Or are you just naturally talented?
I don't think those two things, I don't think it's only that choice is the first thing I should say. Certainly in the UK, there are no qualifications for being a storyteller. You stand and fall by your reputation and you learn very much from others. It's very good. I think I said in the talk, if you get a chance to hear anyone else telling stories, whether it's a talented colleague in school or a professional storyteller performing near you, or of course the videos that are on the internet.
and you can copy, you can emulate, you can eventually get your own style, because we all tell stories in a different way. I can't straight away think of a course. It would, I suppose, have to be an online course for you to access it. But certainly, I think, do what you can with the support of others, and they, including maybe your own family, will soon tell you how you're getting on.
Starting in September, I will be teaching relatively big classes, 22 to 28 students. How should I position the students so that everyone gets the best experience of our story time?
I think I ought to go back to that section where I talked about the storytelling session, and I said then try not to make too long a line of children if you're using picture books. If you're reading a poem from a piece of paper, then of course that's different, but they all need to see the pictures. So 10, 12 at the most, and if it means going to a second row or a third, providing you are high enough to make sure those other rows can see, and you do a little bit of gentle moving of the book, then I think they should all be able to see.
Comments, pure brilliance is one of them. Thank you for making me fall in love with storytelling again and again. Thank you for sharing knowledge, know-how, and for reading and telling us stories that take us back to being a child again. Enchanted, magical moments. Thank you.
I think that's a lovely phrase. Oh, sorry. Sometimes when I talk about storytelling to teachers in other countries, I say two things you could remember. One thing is leave your what's the word I was going to say? Discover the child inside is one thing, and leave your inhibitions at the classroom door is another.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite authors whose stories or poems you read aloud sort of regularly?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. One of my favorite picture books, which is not new, but it's been around for a few years, is that one, which is simply called Shh, and it's about a giant. I would very often grab that one. Another new one that I'm currently using occasionally is this one called The Runaway Pea, about a pea that escapes from a plate. And the reason I'm talking about new ones is because it's the same answer as I often get when I'm asked about my favorite book. It's always changing, you know. If I'm reading something new, something different, that becomes my favorite.
Speaker's Corner. Is that the one in London? I don't know, but maybe the Speaker's Corner in London, I suppose. I don't know, because I don't know who's asking the question. Are you able to answer it?
I'm missing the first 2 or 3 words of each question. Can you try again?
Have you ever tried to tell a story at Speaker's Corner?
Oh, no is the short answer. If that means the one you're thinking of in London, I don't know if it still operates, where anybody can stand on a stool and talk to everybody. No, I mean, I have told stories to 300 or so people, or those are stories from memory, of course. And my normal audiences, I suppose, are 1 or 2 classes of children together, so 50 or 60 maybe.
Right. Thank you. I comments to share. It was simply delightful to listen to you. We would be here until midnight. It was a pleasure to learn with your storytelling tips. And just one more, and then we are going to say goodbye to you, I think. Oh, Alec, you are so gifted. I agree with the girl. Your family is very lucky to have a master of storytelling in their lives. Loved it. I wonder if Charlotte would agree with them.
Well, not Charlotte. Charlotte is my wife, and I no sooner have to go once upon a time, and and she's sort of asleep straight away. But I told stories to my own son when he was little, along with my late wife, and I think that's possibly one reason why he's now teaching English literature at York University. I should say, by the way, finally, it's lovely to have your comments and questions. If you have a more detailed question, feel free to email me. You can use the contact page on my website, and I think details are in the possibly still on the screen or in the notes to the conference, and I'll very gladly give you a longer reply.
Thanks, Alec. I think you have several people here have fallen in love with you, which is nice to know. So you might get some love letters.
Oh gosh.
Alec, thank you so much, and we wish you well, and we hope that you get better soon.